All right, we're streaming. Okay, so if you wanted to share this stream with anyone on a live stream, it's I just posted the link to Twitter. So let me send this to you. I don't know if there's anyone that you want to see that is also involved with changelog host or anyone who you're working with. Oh, great. Okay, so maybe we don't need to do that part. All right, so we're going to spend the next 3-4 hours together trying to see about how we can teach you what you would need to do for moving forward with getting customers. Okay, to do that, can we start by doing? Can you tell a little bit about why you built this product for the 24-hour startup?
So primarily, I've been thinking of different ideas, mainly in the productivity or project management side of things. And I thought for this 24-hour challenge, changelog place to host your changelogs seems like a very simple idea which can be done in 24 hours, and I can ship a minimum viable product within the 24 hours, and then I can concentrate on getting to marketing, sales, and getting people to register for that. So that was the whole idea. And the changelog.host is one part of a suite of products that I have in mind. And there are a few more things like if you have a product and you want to get your users to post feature requests, right? So that is one another small micro product of the whole suite, and there are a few other things that I have in plan. But I wanted to start with changelog.host initially and try to learn how to market this and get people to pay for this. And once I have this done, I should be able to replicate the same thing for the other products. So that was the whole idea.
Okay, I like it. The question that I have is this a problem that you personally have or you know others that have this problem? So who does changelog updates in the world that you are in?
So primarily, I have seen a lot of products. They release numerous different features every month, right? And there is not a single place where you can go and see that these are all the updates that came in after in the past 1 month or past 1 week or something. And it's very hard for an end user to go visit a visit your product and see that a lot of things have changed, but I don't know what is the delta between when I last visited and today. And that was the main problem that I had as an end user, and I wanted to solve that. So that's the whole idea behind it.
Great. So the people who do changelog updates, are you do you know anyone who does that now, or is this the frustration that you have because you can't tell what's changed in software?
So there are a few people who do update the change logs, and primarily uh, there are the basic target market I have thought about is one is the indie maker community, and the second one is small startups who have one or two products, and that is the primary market I have in mind. And in uh, there are a few competitors. Before even starting to work on this, I did some analysis on the competitors, and there are a lot of companies that have been using these kind of changelog websites, and they have been using that. So primarily, these are the two different types of people who have been using such a service.
Okay, great. I'm going to take a look at the site and kind of walk through some thoughts that I have that I wanted to get your opinion on. What do you think is the level of maturity that software companies have when they are releasing their changelog?
What do you mean by level of maturity?
So they're past a version 1, so they release, you know, one update a year, or they release one update every 2 weeks. So how often do you think a software company ships is what I mean by mature. So is it they do a 1.0 release and that's it for 2018, 2019 they'll do a 1.1 or they'll do a 2.0 release?
I think from what I have seen, uh, it's not a very long process, but at least every quarter they try to make at least one release. And I have seen companies which have done much faster iterations also, and at least people tend to release something to the user within 3 months max. That is the time duration that I have seen.
Okay. 24-hour startup, yes. Also, one of the questions that I had is when you have here for tiered pricing related to projects, is it one software is a project? So are you assuming it's one development shop that has several projects or softwares that have different updates to be done? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so um, one product could be a project or a site. There could also be, for example, let's say your say Evernote, and you have a web, iOS, Android, and maybe Windows Phone. So there are different such projects, and they all compose of a single product. So each of these projects could be having its own changelog site.
Okay.
So,
I see what you're saying now, because one of the reasons why I ask that is because the kind of company or person that has multiple software projects is not necessarily an indie solo developer. So I wanted to see what did you think about that? So if it's someone like Evernote that has many mini projects, or they have different, so they have a platform for Mac, they have a platform for Linux, so they have a web. So each one of those needs their own changelog or release notes.
yeah,
So I understand that in that capacity, but beginner, okay, subdomain hosting. What were your thoughts on creating pricing for this? Is this something you just wanted to see how that worked, see what interest there was?
yeah. So
Okay.
uh, I just wanted to experiment with this pricing initially,
Hmm.
and other thing that I thought was all the other competitors, they either had very expensive pricing with as the number of projects increases, your pricing also increases. So I just wanted to say this is a fixed pricing. You have unlimited users, unlimited projects that you can host, and the only difference is either you are an indie maker or you are a startup who has different teams. So that was the little change that I tried to make for against other competitors.
Okay. Um, One comment I have about that is that as someone has more projects, the likelihood that they're going to need more support from you goes up. And if
Yeah,
they need support, you need to cover the cost of support. So if someone has 5 different software projects underneath their account, if they need help because they have a different person who's updating the changelog, um, you'll need to cover the expense of, well, how do I walk this person through with either like an onboarding guide. So once they have an account, it's okay, here's how you update it. And can you do it for them? So this is something that if you have a bigger organization that does have, let's say, 10 different software projects going on to have release notes, is it that they understand how to do it in setting up an email, and then it's as simple as whatever they would put in an email they can put in changelog host, and then it would go live? So I would worry about pricing related to larger organizations that will have greater support needs. They should pay a premium for that, because you're going to have an expense not related to the platform itself. So it's not going to be a hosting related change or bandwidth change. It's going to be a customer support time cost for
yes,
you.
yes.
And so another question that I had for enterprise that you had, and do you have an APA integration already? API
Not yet,
integration?
no.
Okay, but eventually, okay, this will be, if they ask for it, I will build it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So now that I have a better understanding of how you built this, why this frustration was the one that you focused on to solve, the next question that I have are thoughts about. I'm going to go to look at this demo site. Oh yes. So now that you've had after the 24-hour, there was like a freeze, a feature freeze for voting. Like, how was that week for you to think about, well, now do I want to come back to it and make a change? I see you've already done a an update for a 0.2. How was that for you?
So yeah, I've been continuously working on this, and of course, not at the pace that I did want to, but there have been a lot of small features that I have introduced, and the next significant feature would be having a JavaScript embeddable code that you can put on your site, and you can
Hmm.
have a small window open up, or a small pop-up kind of thing open up. So those are all features that people would eventually want, because right now the difference between the software that you see versus hosting your changelog on a blog is practically nothing. So you could as well do the same thing while creating a free WordPress site and do that. But the difference comes in when you have these kind of JavaScript or iOS, Android SDK. So that is the uh, and the API integrations, right? So those are all the different features that would be needed when you really want to change log hosting service. So those are all the things that I have planned, but I also don't want to build all features and then go to market. So I wanted to have a sweet spot where I can uh, have a small launch, beta launch or something, and then once people come on board, I can see what kind of feature they really want and prioritize accordingly. So that's what I've been thinking and planning about.
Okay, I like it. So some of the things, I'm going to take some notes. Um, you mentioned something that was a question that I wanted to explore a little deeper, is how are people currently handling change logs? So you mentioned that they could start a blog and post it there. So what other ways do you think people are updating change logs?
So, um, primarily, I've seen a lot of different projects and open source projects. They host their change release notes on GitHub itself.
Hmm.
So, GitHub, there is a portion called as release notes where you can list down the different features that you've added and bug fixes and all those things. That is another way. And another one is blog. So you have your development blog or something, and you post your release notes there. The other way is there are a few changelog websites and release notes websites which do similar things as what I have mentioned. They have JavaScript or a iOS SDK or Android SDK. You can just plug it in your code, and whenever there is a new release and you post it on your website, it gets pushed to all the other devices. If it is a mobile app, it gets pushed to your mobile, or if it's a web app, you get a small notification. And these are the three different ways I have seen people handle this.
Okay. This is great because one of the things that I wanted to talk about next is, so these are, if this is how people are currently handling it, why do people publish a change log or their release notes?
Uh, Sorry, you asked why
Yeah,
people.
why would a developer or a software company or whoever's in charge of getting a release notes public, why would they have that habit?
It lets you connect with the user and show that you are improving the product, right? And uh, without this public display of saying these are all the things that we have improved, and these are all the nice things that you have. Uh, Without that, the user wouldn't feel like logging back into the site or your product and using that. And there are users who would want a specific feature and they would want to say, uh, like, notify me when this feature comes alive, or those kind of things, right? So you can target those users specifically, saying, uh, you asked for this feature and it's on the roadmap, and we will, once we finish shipping that, you send a notification back to the user. So those are all the things that would really improve the product itself and the user experience for the product.
Okay, so I'm just going to take a few notes of something they said that's interesting, is to go from roadmap to release. So often people or users will request something, and then it takes a while, it's released. You don't know it's released because you're not keeping track. So if they don't tell you it's come out, you're not going to know to update. So from roadmap to release. So the reason why I'm asking these questions is to set up a context of what is the value that a company or a developer would pay to have change logs in one location. And I'm going to bring up slightly different perspectives about why is it valuable. So the things you've talked about are from an end user's perspective of, I want to know what's changed. Well, the few that I want to take is, why do I want to invest development time or someone on the maybe on the marketing side of the software to put this in a public place? And what do I get out of that? So when you're talking about release notes are generally for a developer or a technical audience. And how often are there technical users in a software's audience? So the marketing team is generally responsible for making sure people are aware of the reasons why they built new features. A change log is closer to it's more the technical bare bones version that a marketing team can build off of to say, okay, we built this functionality for offline access. So the marketing team is going to go and take that and change that verbiage to say, now you don't need to have a Wi-Fi signal on your phone, and you could still use the app. So there's this translation that happens so that if it's a non-technical end user or customer, they understand, oh, this is a great update that came out in 2.1. The reason why I'm bringing that is because the people or organizations will pay for things that help them understand how will their customers be happier or better use their software or pay for an upgrade or continue their subscription. So those are the questions that I'm looking at to think, why would someone pay $5, $30, $100 a month for a home for their change logs? So these are the questions that I'm asking, because an indie developer can use it. It will be free. Will they pay you? Probably not $30 a month. It might be a one-time donation type of model, but it wouldn't be sustainable, because an indie maker wouldn't have this wouldn't be the software that directly relates to getting them more customers or more users. It helps them get more marketing. So this would be developer notes as marketing if they could share their release notes. So that's definitely one of the ways that I would talk about what's good about this. So this is developer marketing. Because it goes out in a public forum in a way that's consumable. It has a home. And you mentioned that there were other competitors that do things. Could you mention one?
Yeah, there's one called Noticeable.io.
I'm going to check it out and see how they're doing it. Okay. Okay. Is there a chat button in here? There it is. Great. All right. Okay. We're going to start with noticeable. Um, because the next steps that I see is talking to people who create change logs and to find out what frustrations do they have. So build your change log in seconds. So the main reason why noticeable exists is to build a change log in seconds. So to me that implies that it is a problem to create change log. I don't know that that's true. It might be a problem to publish it. How do you think that that happens? Because to me it's like, well, I'm just going to pull from my project management system all of my completed user stories. That's how I would generate a release notes or a change log. So where do you think is there a problem with creating a change log?
Creating the actual content is one part, and yeah, like you mentioned, translating the technical words into the marketing speak for that, right? So that was a really important thing, and that is one. The other part is making sure your users are notified about these changes. So if you see noticeable, there are different ways of integrating Twitter, Slack, like you have the MailChimp, you can send email to users. So these are all the different integrations that you have that allows you to make sure that your users are updated the moment there is a new release. And that is the second part of any change log website that is important. So otherwise, it's just a simple blog, and without the second part, it's right. So and having the app widgets or the web app, if it's you're using a web app, the small notification saying there are 3 updates. So these are all important things that you, while the user is using, you are immediately notifying the user saying there is a new release and you can refresh and you'll be able to get all these new features. So I think that is more important, and that's harder to do if you have your change log in just a blog. So other examples, let's take there's Visual Studio Code editor,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they have, it's an open source project, and they have their change log. The it's one of the best change log because they have nice gifs and all those things. And the the thing is, it's available as a blog on the Visual Studio Code website, and they also have a nice way to integrate in the editor itself. So whenever you update your editor, it shows up. It creates a new tab and shows the blog itself inside that. So it's a nice way to um, integrate your change log into the product itself. So not every product can do that. For example, let's say you have Dropbox. Say Dropbox is updating a new feature. Uh, the only way you can show that to the user is have a small notification bubble that pops up and says that these are all the different changes. So for those kind of notifications, sending notification to all your devices, for those kind of things, you definitely need a changelog website or changelog hosting service.
Okay. So are there others that have great change logs? So you mentioned Visual Studio Code. Are there others that you're thinking of that do it well?
There's one called Blurt. It's space manager. So it's text editor kind of thing on the web itself. So he's an indie hacker and has been updating this app, and he has been posting on this change, posting his new releases on this changelog site. And this is another example. And if you log into Blurt, if you have an account and if you log in, you'll be able to see a small notification saying this is the new update. So that is, yeah, but of course, this site uses Headway, so that's the advantage of using this changelog site, right?
So that's actually a good point. So if someone has a static site, um, adding in a snippet for dynamic updates for the changelog makes it easier for them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If they have a static site, adding in. Do you have the JavaScript functionality? Is that on the roadmap for you?
It's on the roadmap.
Okay. Let's see. Update these issues. So I'm looking at the Visual Studio changelog, and it is extremely well written. So in that, it's not just a user story number with the feature that went live. There is an actual structure, and it looks like a newsletter. If you'd like to read these notes online, go to Updates, Code Visual Studio. They even have a highlight video from cloud developer advocate Brian Clark. Okay. One of the reasons why I'm asking for who is doing changelogs well, because I want you to speak to them. Because we want to know, how do they do it right now? Since they're doing it well, why are they doing it so well? Is that where they started with doing a changelog? So for anything Visual Studio, Microsoft related, they're going to have capabilities and the resources to be able to do things that indie developers or indie hackers or solo makers will not have. So I think the expectation that a smaller development team would have the same level of polish for their changelog is not as likely. But it's also the process of creating it. So how long does it take to go from when you're doing a release or they're doing a sprint for this version 1.29, what is the process that it takes to create this changelog to go up to be published? Because knowing that process, so I know for me, I pull it from what are the user stories that are completed within the sprint, and then how do I rewrite or edit that in a way that it'll make sense to someone who's not developing the code, but someone who wants to know this was accomplished. And then I want to know who am I sending it to, because I'm doing it for some kind of engagement. So I'm either letting the users know we've released this feature, this feature, and this feature, and why is that important? Because it also means things are going to move. So maybe the UI looks different. There might be a difference in performance. So ideally, it's always it loads faster the next release. But it can also be now there's this new thing that I don't know how to use it. So where do I go to find out how do I enable two-factor authentication? So all of these are beginning points to say, okay, so there was an update. Now I have this new feature. How do I use it? Or how do I add it to my account? And the release notes or the changelog are the place where that can be the starting point. So how do people who do it well, what is their process? Because what we want to do on changelog host is make that easy for everybody, not just the amazing updates that are on Visual Studio Code. We've also found something like this when you mentioned iOS and Android. So when you do App Store release updates, you can change how you say what is changed in the release notes for each version update that you do. And some companies have really great descriptions that are entertaining for what's in the release. And that's also a benefit because it helps people to see the app is updated regularly. I can understand what the new feature that's happened. And those things help with app install rates. So that's also, if I'm looking at a metric that has value to a development team, those are the things I'm going to think about. So if they're going to spend money for something, it has to say, this relates to something I value. So it has to relate to, it helps me get customers, or it helps me lower support tickets. So oftentimes, one of the reasons why we publish changelog or release notes is because someone who's not a daily user, if they log back into the software and it's changed, they're upset because they don't know what's happening, they're uncomfortable, and they don't have enough information. So the changelog is a way to have better two-way communication with users about what's happening and what's updating that they can consume when they're ready to. But you publish it as you publish your release. So as you go to production, you should publish your changelog or you should publish your release notes so that people who will be using the software can know what has changed and how that might affect them. So what is the benefit of that? What do you think is the benefit of being able to do that, where we publish code changes, push to production, and we publish our changelog? How does that help an organization? Like, what are the good things that happen by doing that?
Um, by making sure that the user is uh, notified, you, like you said, it avoids any surprises, and worst case, the user doesn't churn. So that is one good thing. And the communicating to the user that you're constantly updating the product itself, that uh, sort of increases your what do I say, that your visibility, the product visibility itself, right? So it's on the top of users' mind. That is good for your product itself. So maybe that is a feature that I think is important to the marketing.
Well, this is okay. One of the things that I'm looking to do is have it be in your own words why it's important to have a change log, because that's going to be something that you put on the site for changelog host.
Okay.
So we host it in seconds, but we want to talk about why is it important to publish your changelog. So what you have a really great description of the features, but not the reasons why they're important yet, which is the things we're talking through right now. So what we're talking through is users can get frustrated when an update goes out because they don't know how things have changed or how to use a new feature. And they need to know that information as soon as the release is published. So when it goes to production, I don't want the update a week later because I'm going to be lost for a week, or I'm not going to understand what's happened. The second thing that we just talked about is related to establishing trust with the development. When there is a release for an app in the App Store, I know that you're continually updating things and not just saying, I squished bugs this release. So it establishes a better trust relationship between the developers from the App Store to the end users who download. And we also talked about how publishing in seconds doesn't seem to be the problem that someone is willing to pay for, because if they can publish as a blog, the process of publishing is not difficult. The process that has value is users who are getting the updates feel like they're on the same page as the development team.
Okay,
And
that
the
makes sense.
and the change log allows the developers a foot in marketing. So this is to say, usually outside of the indie solo developer world, there are development people, and there are people who do marketing or the people who do sales, and rarely do they interact. But the change logs allows a developer voice to be customer facing.
Yeah.
So what that means to the marketing people is that the developers have transparency to your users, so that developers won't say, I made this amazing release, everyone wanted it, and then customers are upset because they're like, I don't know how to use it. So even though they wanted it, if they didn't understand it was coming, so generally it's the marketing responsibility to say we have a release coming up. It'll have this kinds of high level functionality. And then you're supposed to say what it is, and then afterwards, hey, we released this great thing. So there's supposed to be several touch points of when things change, and a change logs allows developer a single place to put their updates that marketing can use in different locations. So that JavaScript snippet, that might not be the same person who's developed the features for the software that is updating a marketing site. So generally the app exists on one domain, and then the marketing site or the landing page exists somewhere else. So you want someone who has the developer details for things that have been updated for functionality, but the developers don't want to be updating a marketing site, and they generally don't want to be writing blog posts. So that's not where they want to be spending their time, but what they have to say is important. So having a central location for a change host means whoever's in charge of the marketing or the customer facing role now has access to say, all right, we have one central location where you can put this in the email newsletter. We can put this on the blog. It'll update automatically. If you have integrations for iOS, Android, or like Zapier, this is something as soon as development has published something to production, it can be pushed to any marketing related sites. That has value, monetary value to an organization, because once they see customers are happy or they know a release is coming, there are less support requests about this changed. I don't know where to find the reset button. So there is a cost if there is a release and customers now have to file a support ticket because they don't understand how something changed or broke. So the organization has to pay for the expense of more support. So the way that we lower that cost is by letting customers know as soon as a change happens, here's what it is, here's what it looks like, here's how you can use it. And that lowers the likelihood that they're going to freak out and just call support, and then now you have to pay for that extra bandwidth. So that's where the dollars are related to why would you pay for changelog. So every time we have something that we build that we are charging for, we have to translate it to, so without doing something like this, these are the things that you will experience in either time that you have to take, unexpected expenses. So if you have greater support requests, you have to pay your customer support people more for their time. It also means that the sentiment of the users might not be as positive. So sometimes there's releases and they fail. So if you make a total redesign, you go from a 1.0 to a 2.0 and you change everything, users are generally not really happy about that. So the changelog can help them have a record of how things are updated as instead of a 1.0 release to a 2.0 release, they will have information about the 1.1 release that makes some changes, a 1.2 release that the UI has been revamped, a 1.3 release where something else happens. This way they're more along the journey rather than the one communication about the major updates that happen. And the reason why that happens where the software teams might only address customer-facing major changes is resource limitations. So resource allocation limitations are things like the marketing team doesn't have time to publish a newsletter update for every single time the development team ships. So just give me the big ones, and then I can plan for it because it has to fit into whatever else they're working on. And that time constraint means that customers don't always know what's being updated when. So some software are on continuous integration, continuous deployment, in which case you have a change log because things are going, the marketing team or whoever is responsible for customer facing might not know what's happening to the features in production, in which case that sucks. So development should be responsible for making sure it's public knowledge that, okay, we have updated these features and marketing doesn't have to do anything. So those are the reasons why would I pay for a changelog host? I would think development is pushing stuff to production with Jenkins or something like that, which means that users need to know as soon as possible when something goes live because now it's in their account. The other is resource limitations for marketing teams to have updates. If development is shipping every 2 weeks, but marketing only sends updates once a month or once a quarter, they kind of have to cherry pick which are the updates we want to talk about. So having one central home where development is responsible for what the content of the updates are, that means that the customer facing people on the team can use that wherever they talk to customers. So this could be something like you mentioned earlier with putting notifications within app integrations for release notes on the App Store, or something like Zapier. Whenever there's a change log that goes out, it could be a mailing list in MailChimp that is automatically created and a mail gets sent out. That makes marketing feel good because they don't have to do as much work, but the end user is still hearing from the company, and that's a positive thing. How would you, do these things make sense to you? How I'm describing it? Is
Yeah,
it
exactly. So this is the exact benefits that you get out of hosting a changelog here. And yeah, I've been working on the copy, but I didn't get time to do
right? There's only so much you can do, right?
so. So it does make sense the way you say it, right? So customer-facing people, especially the marketing team and also the support team. So if there is a new update to the site and the support team doesn't know that you have to, they would not be able to tell the users saying they would be lost because they don't know that this has changed. So updating them also is an important part. And yeah, directly updating the user is one way, but let's face it, not every user is going to look at the notification or anything.
Right.
So if they call back the support team saying, "Where's my stuff?" and then the support team also has to be updated. So yeah, it does make sense. So these are the it's great. So I've been noting down everything, and
Is it okay? Because one of the things that I really like is that I'm able to talk to you in real time, so that you're with me on the journey of, well, how do we unpack this? But it means I'm not taking as good notes for you. Usually I have really a lot of notes, but the conversation with you is where my attention is. So I'm glad you're able to take notes. And then since this is a video, I'll be able to save it offline, and then I'll send it to you, and then you can review it, or we can talk about it later too. So that's something that I wanted to mention, because usually I have a lot of notes, but I could either write notes or I can talk to you, and talking to you is important. Okay, so what we've done so far is we've taken a look at why you built this, the frustration that you felt as an end user. We took a look at some of the features that you have built, which is minimally viable. We took a look at some of what of the more established competitors that are in this space are doing and why. And then we took a look at who's doing change logs well. So one of the things I like to do is, who is an expert at change logs or release notes? And the example that you gave with Visual Studio, I was like, pro level right here. Look at this. They have links for more details, like well-organized bullet lists. They even made a video. I mean, they have budget for this. This is extremely important to have developer documentation and updates for Visual Studio. So I'm glad that this is the standard. Will most development teams have this level of quality in their release notes? Maybe not. But it might be a standard you could aspire to. And the reason why you would do that is because of the pain points that we covered with users want to know as soon as an update goes out that what is the update, how does it affect them. We talked about what are the troubles that can happen if an end user doesn't know what the release notes are. And we talked about why is it that someone would pay for this service when what they're preventing are costs after the release. So you never want things to break when you go to production. So we don't want a new feature to break, but we also don't want customers to send in support requests because they don't get how to use it, because that also has a cost. It doesn't have a development cost, it has a support cost, and it's very time sensitive. So when someone is sending in support requests, it's not like one person. It's like 10 people as soon as you release that are all the same thing, and they all need to be addressed and resolved, and then you need to make another release to fix whatever it is that they're not happy about. So that has a cost that's people don't want to, a company does not want to pay, which is why having a software, an app like Changelog Host makes sense to them, because they can see, or they have experienced where they have done a release, users didn't know what was going on, and then they have a ton of support requests. Or you're lucky if it's a support request which is private to the organization, rather than they post a negative review on the App Store. That's hard to mitigate once it's out there, or they post on Twitter, what the hell is this? In which case, now it's public for everyone to know that your customers are not happy. We want to avoid that. So that's another thing that we can talk about, as what is the pain that a software team will be solving with having Changelog Host. And those are the things we want to talk about on the landing page. We want all the features, all the functionality, but we want them to remember, oh my God, that sucked. When we had 100 Twitter mentions and none of them were good. Once it's out there, it's out there. It's like, well, how do I come back from that? Now they have to go and have like a social media campaign where they respond to everyone's tweet. They say, we're working on it, or check out the new release. And then that damages the relationship and the trust between the software company and the users, and it's public. So when I mentioned support tickets, that's being really nice, because those are not for everyone to see. But if someone leaves a negative App Store review, or if someone posts something on Twitter, the world knows. Okay. So that was a recap. You took some notes about talking more about pain points related to why would someone pay for Changelog software or a Changelog app. How would you put it in your words for this to make sense when you're talking about this?
So um, reduce the number of customer complaints, or update your users in real time. No, update your users about your product release, and who do I say, these are all the pain points that you would avoid or mitigate, right? So I'm just thinking how to get that in the short headline.
That's okay. Before it's a short headline, I mean, it's something that, how would you say it? So I said it in the way that I speak, but it needs to be in your voice because this is your product.
So by hosting your changelog in changelog, by hosting, whenever you release your product, uh, make sure to update your changelog and inform your users about the changes, so that there is uh, less. So you keep your users updated in real time about your new features, and you reduce your uh, reduce any support requests or customer complaints about things not working or things breaking or people not able to find something due to UI changes. So um, how to with the marketing team, right? So just thinking how to get that into this. Get your developers to market your product directly to your users by updating the features in your new releases. So that is one way you can cut down on, or you can like the developer can reach out or can directly talk to the user or directly communicate to the user about the different uh, new features or bug fixes that they have made. And but that is not a pain point. So
Well, there's a pain point. The way that we would talk about that pain point is that usually developers exist in a separate world of updates than anyone who's doing things customer facing. So unless they talk in like a team meeting, there's very and I think people have access to Team Slack, but when a developer is updating things, it doesn't necessarily go on the radar of whoever's working on marketing. And this is like a bridge.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So yeah, um, get a single place to for your entire organization to know what all has changed or all the things that have been updated, so that all your teams are in sync together. Maybe that's a better way to put this.
Okay, well, this is good because this is getting you thinking in a certain mindset, which is different than thinking about the features that we can build that'll go on the product roadmap, but what are the problems that we're solving that people will pay for? And that's how we go from, oh, okay, now it makes sense. Yes, I understand. I'll pay $30 a month so that my developers can write something and it will automatically be posted to my marketing site. That makes sense. Or it'll automatically be loaded to a draft MailChimp newsletter without my marketing team having to do any more work. So the idea is you're automating something from the development team so that someone else doesn't have to do more work. So if you're saving an hour of a marketing person's time, that has a tangible value to whoever pays for the marketing's salary or expenses. So they'll know, okay, you're going to save me an hour a week from my marketing person. I know exactly how much I pay my marketing person. So if I know you're going to save me 4 hours a month or 4 hours every time I do a release, I know I'm going to save $100 or $200 a month. It makes sense to spend $30 if I'm going to save $100 or $200 or more if they have to have a bunch of support requests. So that's the way that people can rationalize, how do I establish value for $30 a month is, okay, well, this is going to save me the time of someone I already know what I pay them at as hourly rate, times however many hours I'm saving the time, the amount of time. Okay, so it's going to save me this amount of time, which is worth this amount of salary dollars. Yes, I would rather just pay you $30 a month. Or so whatever the number, that is the thought process of why is this worth $30 a month when I could have a blog post for free? Well, the answer is it really a free blog post if you have to pay the marketing person to put it together and get an email from the development team or go into whatever their project management tool and kind of the time that they're spending on that, you're paying for anyway. You're just paying it internally in hours.
Yeah.
So that's how you bridge the conversation related to Well, why would I pay for this when there are free options? Free means time. So if anyone who's paying hourly contractors or has someone on salary, but they have many other things to do, is that where you want them to be spending those 1 to 4 hours a month? Would you rather them be doing something else? So that's how you have the conversation to establish the value of the price that you have for changelog host. How would you say that to describe that value, the value logic of how do I explain why it's worth it?
Um, it's it's much faster and cheaper to get your change log or to get your release notes published whenever a release happens, and save your marketing team or a marketing person time and effort that he has to spend going to all the different places to collect this information and compile it together. So that's does that make sense, or is
Yeah.
there any?
No, that does. It just needs to be something that you're thinking of when you're trying to explain what is the value of paying $30 or $100 a month. Well, how many hours am I saving you in cost every time you do a release? So where are we on the conversation? So while you have flat rate pricing, if you think about it on a per product basis, if it's 4 hours per release per product and someone has 5 different products, how much time is their customer facing person spending on this activity?
Okay.
And now it's like, okay, yes, I will pay $300 a month, all my projects, because the other part is users and roles. This is one of the things that gets delegated because it doesn't seem to have the same level of priority as development or QA, but they pay for it after release and then people complain. So, and that has a very high cost of time and reputation for a software company or whatever kind of company that's doing a release. So the ability to have different users and roles is valuable because they'll want to delegate it to someone who has bandwidth, but doesn't cost as much as someone who has other things on their plate.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the value for roles in an enterprise or a large team setting is that there's going to be someone who writes the release notes and there's going to be someone who reviews and approves it. So it could be the person who's in, the founder wants to say, are you saying things the way I want it to be said? Let me take a look before it goes published. So there's also that in larger teams, which I would call this enterprise. So anyone that has a bigger development team and a marketing team, or they have a QA team, they're going to have people who want to review the work to approve it, not just the person who writes it publishes it, which is the case in smaller indie situations, and that's totally fine. They're not the ones who have the budget to pay you. They may have budget to pay you $5 a month, but an enterprise contract or an enterprise account will have greater budget because they're doing it more frequently, so you'd be able to make more money. So one relationship with a larger team that releases products will be worth 20 indie hackers or solo developers, and it's one relationship for you to build rather than 20 relationships to build.
Understood. Yeah, so that's the idea behind having team members and having roles and setting each team member for a project. So that was the idea where I had in the enterprise plan I had noted that. So yeah, but for a normal startup plan, you have contributors and say the admin, and the admin approves whatever the contributors composing and publishing it as a draft. So that's how I've thought through this process. And I think the admin could be the marketing person, and the contributors could be developers who can like keep posting to the draft, and once the release is done, the marketing guy will just publish it.
Right, right. That does totally make sense about how that would work because you want to have the developers involved in writing about what features they're updating. So there should be some kind of standard within whatever project management tool they're using to say, okay, for our user stories, it relates to these features. There should be some level of I don't want to call it documentation, but some level of documentation where they can talk about what they're doing in a way that makes sense to their business partners or to their customer facing people.
Yeah. So a way to translate the user stories from what a developer thinks to what needs to be communicated to the end user.
Srini, you said you had a developer background. Could you talk a little bit about you feel is comfortable for you and what you do?
Um, like you, what do you want to know about it?
Well, just what are so you said you have a technical background. Could you talk a little bit about what that looks like for you? Do you work independently for everything? Are you a consultant? Are you on a team?
So yeah, oh yeah, I have worked with startups for full time as a full time employee and as well as consulting. Currently, I'm consulting for other startups, and I've been working for like more than a decade, for 11, 12 years or so, and primarily product startups who build web apps and those kind of things. And I sort of like my core strength is I call myself as a software architect, so I build entire systems and architecture and how the data flows from end to end and making sure all these different features are scalable and all, making sure it's good. So that is what I do, and I wanted to like start building my own product, SaaS product, and that's what have been like thinking for a long time. And then I saw that 24-hour startup event was happening, and I said, okay, let's make this as an let me do this in this 24 hours and get something shipped. So that's the reason why I did this. And yeah, so before this, I had also had my own startup, and me and my co-founder we started a document, a place to search your all your entire digital history. So all you do is you link your Google Drive, Dropbox, uh, say your Flickr photos, YouTube videos, everything. So you you have a single place to search your entire digital history of all your assets, and it could be documents on your desktop or your laptop to documents that you have on the cloud, everything. So that was the product that we originally built, and it was in 2012, and it didn't go well, and then we had to shut it down. Then recently, Hiten Shah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he he started the same idea, use FYI.com.
I've been hearing about
So,
that. Yeah.
so it's the same idea, and has done it brilliantly. And it's just an extension. You install it, and you connect all your different uh, Google Drive, or Dropbox, or Box.net, all those accounts, and he makes such. It's basically the same idea, but it didn't work well during the time. And main reason is we both were developers, and we didn't have the yeah, we did talk to few users, and the problem was we the users weren't ready to pay for such a service. And the mistake that we did was we didn't reach out to uh, companies or enterprise people who would want such a service for their G Suite account. So that's the mistake that we did, and yeah, but then we closed it down, and then I started consulting and working on other stuff.
But it's still a lesson learned,
Yeah, yeah,
especially to see Heaton Shaw do it. It's like, oh, well, that's amazing.
yeah.
Are there things that you are keeping in mind with this 24-hour startup from that experience of building something and not working? Well, it's not that functionality didn't work, but it didn't take off in the market. Versus seeing Heaton Shaw doing the FYI project, and then now you're doing a new product. How is that path for what are you keeping in mind for what you're trying to work on?
Yeah, one thing I want to make sure is I don't keep on working on the features or the product itself, and I wanted to go talk to the customers and make sure that I'm building something that they really want. And that's it's hard for me to do because uh, like I'm a developer, and I just love to sit down in a corner and code and ship things. That's what I love, and it's a tough thing to get out of that shell. Right? So that's what I wanted to understand, how to go find these customers and talk to them, and how to uh, initiate the conversation itself. Right. So that's really hard for me to wrap my head around, and that's what I was like. Once I saw that you are helping out the 24-hour competitor, the contestants, then I said, okay, we should really get this done. So yeah,
Well, thank you
looking forward
for
to get out of it.
doing this with me because it helps me understand where are people in their cycle of things. So I come from enterprise development, and then I realize it's the talking to people where I make the biggest impact, and that is also a learnable skill. So anyone who can figure out how to do development can learn how the processes and mindset works for talking to customers or future customers. So this has been really helpful for me. And I also have built things and then no one ever uses it. And then I want to cry. So I was like, I don't want to feel that way. I don't want anyone to feel that way. So you mentioned something that I want to bring back, which is the actual talking to people. What we went through is kind of we walked through what kind of conversation we would have with people, right? By saying, so not only is what is the functionality of changelog host, what does it do, but why would you use it? And we do that was by establishing, have you ever had the situation where you launch something and users didn't know how to use it? We established you don't send out updates to your users every time you do a release because you don't have enough time. And we talked about even if it's easy to put out, to publish a release note as a blog or the changelog as a blog, is it something that is easy to set up and send out everywhere? So let's say those are three top problems that anyone who has released software has faced at some point. those are conversation starters. So the next thing we're going to do is, so we have like so these are like 3 opening questions to say, have you had this pain before? Have you experienced this? Now the next thing is we need to talk to the people who are responsible for those activities. So those are people who are generally product managers. Sometimes it's the Scrum Master who's responsible for putting together release notes for a release. Sometimes it's the technical lead who has to work with the marketing person. But it's generally a developer role or someone who's in the developer side of the house who creates this change log. But then there's a disconnect between anyone who's customer facing knowing about it. So the conversations that we're going to start having with people who are in this world of, we have a release, it's amazing, the release is amazing, and then people don't know about it, or we get a lot of support requests after a release because they have feedback about how things are, or they don't understand. So whoever has that pain is the one who will see the value in using Changelog Host. So those are the conversations we're going to have. They're open-ended. It's not so much, do you need to publish quickly? It's not like a feature list of saying, do you need to check this box for, do you need iOS integration? Do you need to have JavaScript snippets? The conversation we're having is much earlier, which is we're confirming that they have experienced the pain points that we know people who do releases will face. Because if they can confirm that, yes, I have this problem, it sucked, the next question is, what are you doing right now so that that doesn't happen your next release? And if they are responsible for this, they're going to say, well, here's how we do it now, is now we have to set up, someone goes through the day before we go to production, and they have to go through everything in TFS, and then it goes sent to an email, and it goes sent to the CMO, and you want them to tell you what their process is because it's going to be really manual. And they're going to be like, it's not, they don't feel it's as important as other things until it's too late. And then their customers are telling them not good things about the company. So it doesn't seem to be high value work while they're doing it. It's only high value work in hindsight after they do a release and customers are upset or they don't understand what has changed. So we're establishing, well, what is your process? Because we're going to use that and say, wow, that's a lot of work. Whatever it is, it's going to be a lot of work to have someone go in and compile this data from the user stories, wherever they keep that, or the project management tool. They're going to put it somewhere. They're going to maybe they have to do a request to have a website update request, depending on the organization. So then it's another person who has to be involved. So you want them to see, yeah, we have this happen and then this happened, because we're establishing how much time it takes for them, who the players are involved, and you're going to be able to turn around and say, I'm glad you have a process for making it work. I'm building something that helps it reduce the amount of time to go from the developers to customer facing, talking about the changelog. Is that something that would help you with the process that you currently have? And the reason why we're asking that kind of question is, first, we're establishing, do you have this pain, which they would have if they've had a release. So much so, okay, well, what have you cobbled together to make that work? And as they go through, you now know they have 3 people involved. It takes at least 1 business day to finish, rather than a developer doing it once. It's published and it goes everywhere automatically. You're establishing in their mind, I am spending 10 man hours between the different people who are involved every time I do a release. So now that they have in their mind 10 man hours, well, if I could have it, I'm building something where it could be automatic, so it's less than 1 man hour. Are you interested in a trial, or or would this make sense for you to learn more about what I'm working on? And that changes the conversation from, I'm doing something great where you can publish your change logs, to, let's talk about the pain you have. Let's talk about how your version of fixing it with manpower. And I'm going to tell you, I have a software solution, which is much more scalable because it's a one-time fee and it does 10 man hours of work every time you release. Does it make sense for you to check it out and do a trial or to talk about it? And then from there, the question that I would ask are, do they buy software? So another question is, so now that we've established, okay, good fit, they have this problem, they're spending a lot of inefficient man hours on it, software makes sense to help them automate it. The next thing is, are they used to buying software? Because if someone they have no budget or they don't have a P card, then even if you could solve it for them, would they take the next step of moving forward, of trying out something? And if they don't buy software, you're not going to be the first one. So that's something that I look out for, to say, okay, what is your process for buying software? Is that something you do for other things? So how do they pay for their project management software? Because this is something that if development is managed with user stories, that tool is generally not free. It's in a development team. So what is that process like? How do you pay for it? Is it integrated into some larger contract, or is it something like, are they using Pivotal and then they're paying a monthly fee? How long did that take to get started? What was the process like to bring it into the organization? Because those are things that are going to help you understand who you need to be talking to later to move the deal forward, where they get a trial or they do ask you to send them a purchase order or an invoice. So that's how that conversation works.
Okay.
Okay.
So you ask whether they buy a software or the process of buying software even before suggesting for a trial.
I mean, I would, because if they don't normally take on new software, will they do a trial? I'm not sure. And if they do a trial, is it a paid trial? So if they do a free trial, have I wasted my time if they're just going to open an account and do nothing for 2 weeks? Or am I going to do it for them? So during the trial, so if I know that they buy software, this is how it works for them, I will do a trial and I will do the first one for them. It'd be like, if you normally send an email or you have someone to draft an email and then it gets sent on this chain of people, draft one email, and then I will upload it to you for your account. I'll set up your account. I will put it out there, and then I will send it to you already done. And then you will know, oh, that's it. Without them having to do the learning curve of, okay, you said it was easy, but now I have to have a new login, a new software to learn. Maybe I don't want to do that, but if you can show and do it for me that, oh, that was really as easy as you said, I'm more invested in doing it again. So that's why I would. That's the reason why I asked that question. How do they buy software, or do they buy software first? Because I'm not necessarily going to want to invest. I'll do it for you, unless I know that they are in the habit, or they have they already buy software from other vendors or SaaS subscriptions. And before I go on to the next idea, will you share with me what you've taken down as notes, because this is probably new?
So yeah, sure. So the first conversation is to understand how they currently handle whenever a new release goes out. So what kind of processes, trying to identify what kind of process they have, and once they say that they collect all the, once they talk through the different manual steps and identify that it takes X amount of man hours to finish this, then I suggest to them that I'm having a solution which can do this in like 10x faster or something, and it can be automated, and all your updates go instantly to all your users and all your stakeholders. Are you interested in looking at or talking to me about this? And
Excuse me.
then identifying how they do they even buy SaaS product or a software, what are they using? For example, are they using Jira or a productivity tracker or something? And who I should talk to get to the get the purchase order or the get paid for that piece of software. And then if they do buy software and if I get the contact of the person who approves this, I can set up a trial and I can even get the first update, uh, like let the normal process go in parallel, and I can ask them to send that email to me, and I can show them how easy it is to paste this entire release note into the software and then get it published within just a few clicks. So once I show that, I can say give the trial login to them and then ask them to pay for that. So that is it's the process I have noted.
Excellent. Okay. I wanted to make sure I was like, I said a lot of things. I wanted to make sure that you were able to get it. Because one of the things that you did mention that I wanted to come back to is sometimes the person who does the work is not the person with the P card or the person who buys software. So when we have to talk to someone who just approves purchasing decisions, what's important to them is not the same as the person who's doing the work. So we have to rephrase what we're talking about as the value to the person who buys software. So it could be that the person who does the work is saving 10 hours, but the person who pays for software, they have more efficient communication to customers. So they can see, I know I'm saving 10 man hours worth of salary by switching and using this software. Something else that can come up, or objection type of things, are related to, well, should the development manager buy this, or should the marketing manager buy this? Or whoever's responsible for each area. And to me, for changelog host, this should be in the development house, because the developers are the one who are putting together the changelog generally, and marketing benefits from it. And usually developers don't like marketing telling them what to do or how to do it. So they should own it. Which means they should also own the buying of the software part, even if it's for the benefit of marketing. And the way that we talk about why that's of value is why would development manager pay for something that benefits marketing? You would rather have your developers working on development rather than working on something that's a marketing task.
Makes sense.
So
basically, which team's budget this?
Right, right.
You're making the sell to the manager of that team and saying, yeah, your team better spend time working on the product itself than talking to your marketing team.
Yeah. And then another thing related to that is, do you really want to update a website when you can just give marketing one JavaScript snippet and then they never have to request an update from you? So that's also lowering their workload whenever they have to do a release update and update a website. So that's another thing that they can see as a benefit for the development time that's being saved. So they don't have to do an update to a website. They have one JavaScript snippet and it updates automatically. So those are things that I'm thinking of for, well, how is this of value to the decision maker who's going to buy the software versus the person who's going to use the software? So now we've covered how to talk to people. Do you feel good about what that conversation would look like?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next thing I'd like to do is figuring out what are the types of job roles of people who you'd have this conversation with. So if we're talking about product managers, would it be product managers or development managers? Let's see. So let's see if, what do you think?
I think product manager, because he is the one who says for this release feature A, B, C is coming out, and he has the responsibility to communicate that to the marketing team or who is using the product. So I think product manager makes more sense here.
Okay. That helps us because the next thing I'm going to do is how would you find product managers to talk to? Do you have ideas about how you would do that right now?
One way is through LinkedIn, search for product managers of startups, and that is one way. Another thought I had was this was specifically about the maker community. So that is on product end, you see so many, like every week there are hundreds of products going releasing, right? So you can contact each maker or the startup, and not every product that's getting launched on product end is by a small indie hacker. So there are
Right.
numerous bigger companies who have significant budget to do this. So that is one thought I had. And yeah, LinkedIn and product and yeah, these are the two primary things that I had in mind.
Yeah, you're right on the money right there because you want to know where do the people who do what you are working on, where are they on the internet? And product hunts, there's a maker community, but there's also a much larger startup community that uses it to announce well-funded projects. And you can tell because they have a really high production value for their marketing assets. It's like they made a video? What? Like special effects? Or they have a lot of really good images and screenshots. I was like, okay, this is not a scrappy side hustle thing. There's serious dollars and effort behind this. So when you think about, have you reached out to product hunt people before?
No.
Okay. Well, that's all right. That's all right. Let's take a look. I wanted to give an example of how do we find out without being stalkers, which is, it's often the questions like, how do I reach out to someone who I don't know? Well, you do it in a casual way, not too much detail. So let's see. So we have, I'm not going to go for today's top or Maker Festival. What is Wednesday? Oh yes. Where is screen share? So all right. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, but you should see you now, right? Okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna switch over to product tons, and there we go. So, what kinds? I'm gonna go for something previous. So not today, product hunt, top hunts, but let's say Monday. What would you look for on product hunts to look for a larger company's launch?
You're asking how to find the.
Yeah, would you just click around? Yeah.
So one idea that I had was if a product that was hunted by someone else and the maker is someone else, it's
Mm-hmm.
usually by a big company who hires these hunters to hunt their product. And if it's an indie maker, they usually hunt it on their own. That is one idea that I did have.
Yep.
That,
That definitely works. So, um, I wanted to mention that because we're looking for indicators when we're searching to find out what is this a potential good fit. So earlier I talked about they have really good production value, like they have videos, really well done illustrations. That indicates some level of budget or talent that they're putting to this launch. So if they have someone else hunting, it means that they have some kind of network of people. That this is probably something that has more resources to do this launch. That's definitely true. The other thing that I look for is a team. So if they have 3 or 4 people working on a product or a launch, all of those people are likely funded in some way, or they have some kind of resources to be able to do this product. So those are things that I would look for. Is this someone, an indie maker, or is this someone with a bigger budget? If you have a team of people working on a product being launched, you have some kind of resources that is not an indie, a solo developer, or shipper. So to me, this would be an indicator. This is the Get Form 2.0 intro email, and it is really long and well written. I would think someone who has this amount of detail and thought into their product hunt launch is not a small, small group or small independent person. So if we have so one of the things that I really like about Product Hunt is you know who the person is. So from this initial welcome email, hello Product Hunt community, I know that Mert Can is the co-founder of GetForm. And he is a maker.
And I could take the name of the company and try searching it on AngelList.
Correct. Yeah, so once you know that his name is this, and then you know his domain, you can use Hunter and look for it. So the other option is he seems to have a personal domain. But really, what about GetForm? Does GetForm have email? No. But that's exactly it. So that would be the process of finding out who would I reach out to. Well, I would reach out to the co-founder of GetForm, who just launched on Product Hunt. Where did I put the Product Hunt page? This one, okay. Because I have enough indicators to say this is someone who, where did we go? There we are. So this is someone who has established some kind of team and resources. They're doing a release, and we know that they're the ones responsible for customer-facing updates for product. So sometimes you have a technical co-founder who doesn't want to do anything public, so they have someone else do all of the things related to what people see and say on their website or on their social profiles. So we know that if there are other co-founders, that Mert Can is the one who does things related to customer facing, so like a product management type role. And we know that this is GetForm 2.0. So guess who needs release notes? So you have the information about what the product that he launched, which is a 2.0 release. You know the name of the co-founder who's responsible for product. And you have something to talk about, which is how this was released on Monday. It was featured. So if we go back up, I think I saw a badge. Product of the day. So to open a conversation, I'm sure he's got a ton of emails after doing a product launch. So congratulations for being, #1 product of the day. You see he's doing, this was a major 2.0 release. And now you can start a conversation about who you are, that you're working on changelog, host, and how does his team deal with updating release notes for GetForm? Does it make sense to have a conversation? So he has documentation, product documentation, which is not the same thing as release notes. They don't serve the same purposes. Perhaps it's something he keeps in his blog to say we're live on Product Hunt. But I don't necessarily know that I would call this a release notes or a change log. This is more larger, high level content. So now you have enough information about who he is, what he's done recently, which is the big launch on Product Hunt for 2.0. You see the updates that he's made, the features that he's released. And now that we've gone on the site, we know that the closest thing to developer change note or change log is what's on the blog. And that he has documentation, which means having developer support is important, since he already has that information on Getform. So having change release or the release notes or the change log available is something that seems like a natural next step, since he especially has a developer-focused product with having endpoints for forms. So those are things that I would use to start a conversation. What do you think? What would you do?
Yeah, I did look at the blog, and it is definitely not recent kind of thing, because I don't even see the version one. Wish about version one.
Hmm.
I would say I would ask them how they are, or maybe the first question I would probably ask is what's the difference between version 1 and version 2, and what's the what has really changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I can ask them how, or will they be interested in it would be the jump to go from this to asking about this.
Wait a minute. Which is the this? I lost you there.
So the first, so I'm reaching out to him, and let's say I ask him, I saw that you have released Gitfun 2.0, and I'm interested in learning what has really changed between the older version and the newer version. Is there a way? Is there a place where you have any change or release note? And once he gets back saying these are all the things that have been improved, I can ask him if he would be interested in a service which can host the change log, and would he be willing to look at this. So that's what I am thinking. But I'm wondering if this is a big jump between asking what has changed and immediately asking for would he be interested in change log or post. So that's what I'm wondering. Is it clear, or?
Yeah, it is clear. So the question is he interested? And really, it's up to him to say yes or no. But it is something that you can do is say you're the changelog guy, and one of the things you can offer is, could I host the changelog from version 1 to version 2 for you? Because you have a freemium level, and you'll have your URL when you send the email. So not only you'll have your name, but you'll talk about, I'm working on making change logs accessible, or making change logs easier for everyone to read. And if this is someone who has documentation for his software, he knows the value of change logs, which is different than blogs, because you can have different types of content updated on a blog, if I want to see the change from version 1 to version 1.1, I don't want to scroll through 5 blog posts.
Yeah.
So I want to have one location where I can see, okay, in version 4 it looked like this, in version 4.1 it looked like that. And that kind of logical sequential, there is a home just for all of the changes that have happened. That can be a way that you describe what you're giving with using changelog host. Because it may not be that he needs a trial for a paid plan if this is the only one that he's doing. It could be that it's a freemium. I think the free level that you have. But the thing that I would do where you are now, excuse me, is ask for testimonials and feedback to put on the site. So that's one thing I haven't seen yet. And I wouldn't expect to because it's a 24-hour challenge. There's only so many things you can do. But one thing that helps to establish credibility with pricing is to see the names of other software or developers or people who are using it and why they like it. And that helps to establish, oh, other people are using this. They've had the same problems. And people who have the same job title as I do, or these are also technical co-founders who are using this, or some kind of product manager, scrum person, scrum master. There's similar people who are solving the problem of change logs are easy and accessible for everyone to see. So having it be in their own words why it's been valuable on your site helps people understand the social proof aspect where, okay, someone who is in my shoes somewhere else is using this and getting this benefit. That, okay, I will try it out. Or I'll sign up for a trial account or a free account.
So it's better to reach out and even go set a trial site for them, and even if it's a premium account, it's okay. But to it makes sense if you get back a testimonial or some kind of a social.
Yeah. So one of the things that you're in is that you have the goodwill that you can establish by saying, I've built this app. You have the beginner account where you can set someone up for a project as a subdomain on your hosting, and you just give, here's a first version of what your release notes are that I can tell from your Product Hunt launch. Let me know if you want to update it or if you want to add more, and I'll send it to you, and you could add this as a link to your site or a link on your documentation. And this way, it's like, oh, this would be great to have a change log. I just have to add a link to it on my site, and it's already existing. So that makes there's less friction of saying, do I want to try something with the change log? Maybe, but if you've already done it for me and I could see it, it's like, oh, well, that looks good. So it's an easier next step to take some kind of action, and it allows you to have you're making goodwill deposits, so they can speak back to you and want to reciprocate that. Oh, you've done this for me, and I can either say something positive about what this is and how great this is, or I can share it with other people, or I can post about what you're doing on Twitter, and that helps you. So that's something that you will benefit from, even if it's not a paid account right now, because one of the things you don't have is you don't have a lot of users or testimonials on the site, and you're going to need that. Have you launched on Product Hunt yet or anywhere? Okay. Do you have a plan or thoughts about it?
Yeah, I like my personal plan date was first week of December, and yeah, that's what I'm planning to get everything, all the bugs ironed out, and hoping to launch before during the first week of December.
Okay. Which is like next week.
Yeah.
Do you have a plan in place for that, of like who you're going to reach out to, or where are you in that process for launching?
Currently, I don't have any plan as such. there is the indie hacker community, and there is the WIP.chat community is also there, and GetMakerLog. So I'm planning to reach out to people there, and like once I launch to product and ask them to go there and try. That is one idea,
It's a
and
good one.
also maybe that's all I have currently. I don't
Okay.
have any concrete plan as such.
Oh, no, that's plenty. That is a plan. That's a good plan. So, one of the things that you can also do, so we looked at the GetForm co-founder. You can also ping him and say, I set this up for you to check out. I'm going to be launching next week on Product Hunt. I'd like to send you the link when I go live. Is that okay? And since he's someone who's just went through a launch, that would be beneficial for you to have some kind of other interest. So one of the other things that you can do is anyone who meets the criteria that you have for, it would be good if they had a changelog on their site that has launched on Product Hunt. You can create a list of those people in Excel or Google Sheets, and then since you know that they launched it on Product Hunt, when you reach out to them and say, "Hey, I saw the launch that you did. I made a change log for you. I'll be launching next week on Product Hunt. Could I send you a link to it when I go live?" That's an easy yes answer rather than saying, "Would you mind if I sign you up for a freemium account on my service?" But it helps because having more people go to your GitHub page on the day that you launch helps you get upvotes and helps you get more visibility, get you more traffic to your site, which is the whole goal of doing a launch, is to be able to have more people talk about it and look at it and get more traffic to the actual site that you have. So that's another thing that you can do for outreach from where you are today. So there's also the outreach, how do I say this? So outreach is dependent on where you are and where you're starting right now. And what we talked about in the high level of how do you have a conversation with someone who would be a good fit for an enterprise plan, or who release a lot of products, or they have a lot of releases, that's a different conversation than an indie maker or someone who's recently launched a product on Product Hunt. And because what you want the next step of that conversation to be is to let them know that you're going to be doing a Product Hunt launch and to send them a link on the day that you launch. So that's an easier yes than getting someone to sign up and use even the free account for updating their changelog. And if their next week is going to be launching on Product Hunt, everyone you talk to who is in the market, or you think it would meet the criteria of they release software, they need to share what the updates are, as many of those people as you can find on Product Hunt, let them know that you're going to be launching this type of product. Rather than saying, buy my stuff, but you're saying, I'm in this space, I'm going to be launching on Product Hunt, could I send you the link the day I launch? Is a much easier yes than, hey, you need to have your change log posted publicly. No one wants to hear that I'm doing a bad job. No, that doesn't make anyone feel good. But people do like to uplift and support each other. And if they realize, oh yeah, that would be great if I had a change log on my site, then it's their decision to find out more about you once they understand I should have a change log. Like if I have documentation for my software I'm releasing all the time, I should have my change log and my release notes be public. But it's one of those should items rather than hair on fire items. I'm going to stop sharing my screen since we're doing the I think this is the right place to talk about who to reach out to because you're going to be doing a product hunt launch, and that's your next immediate milestone, rather than reaching out to people on LinkedIn who are product managers. Because right now, what you're working on and what you want to succeed and get people talking and having awareness is going to be this product hunt launch. And you're still going to talk about it on, MakerLog or WIP chat. You're still going to do that. But the goal is to let them know and be a part of this release that you're having on Product Hunt. And then after you do the launch, the Product Hunt launch, you'll get traffic, you'll have a lot of feedback. 2 weeks, 3 weeks after that all dies down, you'll need a plan to get traffic from people who are in your market to look at changelog host and know that you exist, which is where the finding people on LinkedIn makes sense to do. And that makes sense to do on a long-term basis because that's where people, you'll have their information, you'll know who's in the type of roles that would buy this kind of software. Okay. I feel like we accomplished a lot.
Yeah.
Are there other things that were on your mind?
Plan.
Okay. Are there other things on your mind that we haven't talked about related to marketing sales yet?
I think that's what I had in mind. So yeah, the original plan was product hunt and LinkedIn, and I do it of what to say and what to talk to the co-founders or other makers, and that does make my job a lot easier. So I just have to go search for all these other products which has any newer version or any kind of developer related products and target them first, and then I think it's a decent enough plan that I can work through before the launch and get something in place. So, yeah. Other than this, um, so right now, yeah. Other thing was you did mention about this a bit earlier, right? So how as more projects are added, more support is going to cost more for me, and so should I? Yeah, coming to the pricing itself, right? So uh, this is just an experimental pricing that I have put in place right now. But should I stick with this, or maybe change this so that there is a limit on the number of projects? Is that something that
You can
should I
definitely.
do this now? Or
I don't think you need to do it now. The thing that you need to do is start building awareness that you solve a particular problem, and you know that those people value having you fix it for them. Like that's the goal that you have right now. And then you can always optimize pricing and features once you have enough people who have validated, I have this problem, you can fix it for me. This is a deal compared to how much time that I'm spending doing this manually. And then you can change your pricing or your offer however often you want to optimize to see what converts better. At that point, that's more about optimizing for conversion. Right now, we're still in the validating stage and building awareness that this exists and that you have a name association to people who do change logs and release notes.
okay, so I'll let the pricing be as it is, and were the main questions, like uh, where to find the people, and yeah, that we covered that. And main question was how do I reach out? What's the email going to look like? And we have covered that too. That is the main thing because at least I can understand for the initial launch, product and makes sense, and I can reach out to all these makers. And but what do I send them? How is the email thread going to look like, and how the conversation is going to go? So that's what I wanted to learn a bit, and you have helped a lot in that. So I think I've covered a lot in this. It's been like yeah, 2 hours, right? So
2 hours.
I think we've covered a lot.
It's awesome. I wasn't sure how quickly we'd get through different sections because I was like, well, he has a lot of questions. I want to make sure we answer them all. But I feel really good that we were able to cover as much as we have in the last 2 hours. I wanted to recommend one other place that you mentioned, AngelList or Angel.co. You can search for product people. That's one of the tags. Let me see if I can share my screen with you. Okay, let's go take a look at Angel. So this is search. I usually want to search people or projects, but if I am searching products, is that a keyword? Yeah, there we go. Where'd you go? Product management. So something else that I like to do as an indicator for people is who is hiring in the role where that responsibility is part of the solution that I'm offering. So if we know that Vimeo is hiring a product manager for community, is Vimeo the kind of company that, do they already have a changelog that's public? What's their process like for it? And if they're hiring for it, for a lead product manager with a 6-figure salary, does it make sense for them to save time and money of the salary person to be using changelog host? And it doesn't necessarily have to be Vimeo. It could be a much smaller company. So Cardflight is hiring a product manager for small businesses to secure payments. So they don't necessarily have to be technology companies either. But anyone who's in the role of product manager, if they're doing release notes and change logs, those are people that you are helping them do their job easier. So this is where I would look. So you either search for, I thought you could search for people. Let's see, companies, there we go. Companies and keyword is products. Let's see what shows up. Well, that's just entirely too big with over 100,000 companies. So I would look for indicators of people who are hiring product roles, because those are companies that are spending money in that space, which means that when they bring on a new person is going to want to try new things. That's the time they buy software. Or they want to change things up and you want to be part of, when are they willing to make a change? That's the time they're willing to make a change. So they're more likely to buy when someone new comes in and wants to do things differently or do things better than how it was before. You are one of those options for how to do that.
But I can't reach out to the person directly, right? Because I wouldn't know who is working there as or I should maybe use LinkedIn.
Right. So that's more LinkedIn. So LinkedIn will tell you when people have started a new job. So one of the searches that you can do is see who is a product manager. So this is who just started as a project manager in whatever city or whatever connections that you have. And that's someone who is likely to be open to, so product manager in people. So we want people who are new. And I think this is, if you have the premium LinkedIn search, you can search for how long people have been at their current company. Or do you have the free account? Do you, let's see, connections. Let's do second degree connections. Let's see. Manager. Oh, I've worked with Patrice somewhere else. She's been there for 2 years. Okay. So that's something that I would do. This isn't a search query you can do from the LinkedIn free account, but you can do it from the premium account of see how long, when someone is new in their role. So you can say has been product manager for the last month, 2 months, 3 months, and they'll just return back those profiles of people. And those are people you can say, congrats on the new role as product manager, because you know they have only been in that position for a little while from their product hunt profile. So those are ways that you can start conversations with people who are likely to make a change and buy new software and introduce new vendors is when they start a new role.
Okay.
But you can do this after you do your product hunt launch, because that's really what's happening next week. So you are a solo developer, you one focus, and then after you do a product hunt launch, that would be the kind of ongoing how do I reach out to people? Is there are always going to be people who are starting a new product management role. So that means that there's always going to be someone who is in the phase of I'm looking to do things better than how it was before, and you are a solution for that. So those are people who are more likely to buy, or they're in a position to buy. They just got approved for a P card. They just got approved to spend. They have a budget. Now is the time that they want to make an impression to do things different. Not to say that product managers don't always want to improve, but when they start at a new company, there are different changes. New software gets onboarded all the time. They bring in new vendors, new consultants, new freelancers. So that's when there is a time of change, you want to be part of that change. Okay. Let's go back over here. So Srini, I wanted to ask you for feedback. This is something that's new for me that I'm doing, where I'm doing the live streaming and helping. And I'm like, well, I have all this knowledge and experience. I should do something with it. Do you feel that this is valuable to you?
Of course. So, like I mentioned before, right? I, if it weren't for this, it would have taken at least a month or two for me to even talk to the first person, and even then, the the kind of email that I would send out to them, I don't know if it would focus on the pain points that they are having, all those things, right? So you have helped me uh, get all these things, uh, like focusing on what the product manager or the marketing person, what kind of pain he's going through. So all these things, as a developer, what I always think is this is going to help me as a developer to push out change logs or release notes. But thinking in terms of who else in the company or organization it can help. That that kind of uh, thought process, I wouldn't have gone through that if it went to you. So that's amazing information that I have gotten. And yeah, other thing is what should I email to any person that I'm going to reach out to. The template that you have given, even though it sounds pretty simple, it was really amazing. The the kind of email that I would have sent would have been completely opposite of what you have written down. And I would have directly said, "Do you want to change log hosting service or something like that?" And that would immediately thrown the person off. Right? So this is a nice way to start a conversation and go through that. So that's just amazing content that you have given. And you have like, yeah, you have gone through the process of finding the person who would, who is more likely to buy a software. All those things, it does make sense, and you've helped a lot in this to us that we have had this conversation, and it is amazing. So it also helps me to think about how I'm going to think of the next product or the next product in the suite that I was talking about, right? So the feature request or the roadmap, sort of, all those things. To think in terms of who else in the in the organization, which other team it's going to affect, and how it can help them. So I've been I have a lot of homework to go back to and do. So it's amazing that you have the 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 way that you have taught this to me. It's really great. Yeah. So I don't know how else to.
This is wonderful. Thank you. So one of the things that you just mentioned that I wanted to bring up is that I really like that you're building products that are related to the software development lifecycle. So that means that they're also going to be the same audience. So the product manager is also worried about how do I talk about roadmap.
Yeah.
They're also worried about, well, how do I figure out how to prioritize features? So those are the same kinds of problems, the same person that you're going to be serving, they're dealing with those questions. And when you start a conversation with, hold on, where am I? Here. When you start a conversation related to changelog requests, you can also move to, so how are you dealing with your roadmap and publicly talking about it? So internally, everyone has a plan for how are we doing the roadmap, what are we putting on the epics, but how are they explaining it customer-facing wise? Because if that's something they say they have a solution and they love it, that's feedback for you to know maybe that's not the next thing I release. But if they say everyone keeps asking for feature requests and I don't know how to prioritize it, that's taking up a lot of my time or my team's time, that's a good indicator. Be like, okay, maybe the feature request is the next thing. Because once you have a conversation and have engaged with a product manager about a change log, there are other things that you can help them with that are related to developer work and how do we talk about it. So when we're at the change log, it's already done. We're at the end. It is released in the wild. But when we're talking about roadmap, we're talking about in the future. So how do you talk about things that are coming in the future? And the product manager is responsible for both ends of that coin.
So do you suggest using the same conversation as a lead to the next, identifying whether this is a problem for them in the same email thread or same
It could
conversation?
be, yeah. Well, I think it's not necessarily the same email thread. It could be months or weeks later but it's the same person. So one of the things that you'll want to do is once you don't want to overload people with saying, I have 5 projects, I want you to use all of them. You say, I want you to use one thing. and then I'm going to make it easy for you. You break it down so that they move forward with you. And then once they're there, it's going great. Excellent. So since I help a lot of product managers, I hear a lot of problems about how do I talk about my roadmap? How do you do that? Is that a problem for you? And then you'll get that same feedback before you've built it, how they deal with it, what words do they use. And if they just say, product roadmap is fine, but I have so many requests for features, I don't want to go through 100 emails from people. How do I prioritize that? Then it's like, oh, well, is that important to you? Is that something that you wish there was software that would help you with that? Then they could tell you, yeah, that would help me because then I could just put everything in there and then it would automatically figure it out and I could share that. That would save me so much time. Then you're validating the problem with the person who would be buying. You already have established relationships with product managers. So that's how I would say you have changelog. Let's move forward with changelog and product managers. And once you have established a relationship with them, you can go back and say, hey, people are talking about roadmaps. What are you doing with your roadmap? How do you share it? Do you share anything at all? And then let them tell you their process and does it suck? What's good about it? Because for software to make sense to pay for, they have to see where they're paying for it somewhere else. And say, okay, you're going to save me 20 hours just to have this automatically visible. If they have a culture of transparency, so I want everyone to know what we're working on and what's going on, publishing a roadmap makes a lot of sense. Like it aligns to that belief that we share what's going on openly. So that makes sense to say, okay, this would be a good fit for product managers that value transparency and they want to talk openly about it. They just need a way to organize it that they don't have right now. So that gives you indicators about what is the next product that you should be developing for the same people that you're serving, and how do they value it, and what words do they use to describe why it sucks. So it could be they just send a tweet that says, yes, internationalization is coming. Well, what does that mean? What kind of internationalization? When is it coming? So even though they gave you a hint and they thought it was good, then people are like, that's not enough. I need more details. And then it's, oh, I don't have more details. How do I give them an update when I do have information? I would say I'm going to publish it on the roadmap. Are they doing I've seen a lot of companies that publish a Trello board to say, here's what's in the process. And does that work? Is that good enough for you? Like you can't send updates to users or to your followers to say, hey, I moved over a task in Trello. You've done it, but it's not a way that you can trigger a message to people. So there's that. Sorry. Okay. So I feel good about mentioning how you can pre-validate building the next software for the same group of people, because if you're serving product managers, it's much easier to continue a conversation about what their current workload is than to go and find new people and restart the process all over again of saying, okay, so do you have this problem? Yes? Okay, how are you solving it? And you'll need to go through that process anytime you have a new market. So if you're serving product managers, it makes a lot of sense.
Also, one question I had was how important is having some kind of a blog and writing some content which is going to help product managers? Is that important in this stage, or should I maybe do it later? How
So
important is it?
uh, the way that I see having content, so content is always valuable. The question is it the right thing for you to do next? So content makes sense as an inbound marketing strategy when you have a low price product like you do. So since you're not selling, $1,000 a year subscription upfront, or you're not selling a $5,000 a year subscription, when you have users come on board, you need a low cost of acquisition. So if someone can find you on Google to your blog to read an article about writing great release notes or writing great change change requests or change logs, that's going to send traffic to you. There are people who are already interested that maybe they can sign up for a trial. And it's affordable enough over a long period of time because content works. Content does not turn on and off. So you need to write the content. It needs to be indexed. You need to get ranked. So it's still this whole process. But once that process is set, acquisition costs are lower than if you were to go and say do paid traffic, something like Facebook ads, or you could do ads on Stack Overflow. Your cost of acquisitions are going to be much higher on paid channels. That has to be worth it when your product is priced at $5 a month. It's really hard to pay $100 for a customer if they're going to pay you $5. So that's something to keep in mind. And doing content, so if you were to have a blog, that works for lower cost acquisition of new clients. So eventually, that'll be something you'll want to do. Do you need to do it tomorrow? No, not from where you're starting, unless you have, it's very important to you. If it's very important to you, you will go and do it. But eventually, once you have your product hunt launch is next week. That's a priority, a timeline priority. The next thing is talking to product managers and directly speaking to people about the problems that they face with change logs, and confirming that exists and getting a process down to be able to use the words of what their problems are in their job so that you can update the website when you send people there and be like, oh yeah, I have that problem. That happened last month. Yes, I want a trial. Or yes, I'm going to sign up and do a free account, which is how everyone should start. They're just going to sign up and try it. And then optimizing and saying, hey, would you like to upgrade from the free account to the $5 account? That's how you're going to move forward with revenue right now from where you are. Once you have a baseline of revenue of enough customers, you'll know, do I want to spend money on writing blog content or doing it yourself? Or do I want to try doing other things to acquire new customers? So content is good. It's a great inbound strategy. It takes time. So it's a long commitment. So you start writing content now, but you have to keep writing content. And it'll be months before you see, oh yeah, that makes sense. Now I have all this organic traffic through search from content that you've put out there. One thing that you can do right now that is not a huge commitment. So you have chat here. Yes. Okay. On your site, you can add a mailing list sign up. Do I see? Okay. I see trial. I see chat. Oh, there it is. Okay. Yes. So this could be something that if people are not ready to sign up for a free account or a trial account, having people get on the mailing list about not necessarily new features for the website, but news updates for product managers, more people are going to be interested. So you want to build an awareness of product managers who have issues related to what your software is. And then from there, you don't have to write your original content like a blog post. Instead, what you can do is say, this was a great article on Hacker News about how often you should release. And you can just put a paragraph of your opinions about that piece and share it. And that's a much lower commitment for one person to do on a weekly or monthly basis with a newsletter than saying we're going to publish a blog post every week or every month or whatever it is. So I think that's the next manageable level for one person to move forward with related to content. And I'm also assuming that you like talking about things that product managers are doing in their day-to-day. So if it's something related to release notes, change log, roadmap, that you like reading about those things and sharing, that makes it a lot easier than saying, I can't stand this. I would much rather deal with like electrical engineers and I want to talk about, negative charge. It helps that you like the people who you will be writing to. Mm-hmm.
Uh, can you explain about that? Is it a product or is it?
Well, sorry to say a little bit about what I'm doing with Outbound Olga. So it's a productized outreach. So what I do is I know enough about a company that I can go create a profile and say, so for you, it'd be something like, I'm going to find all the product managers who have been hired in the last 3 months, and I will start sending them emails to engage in a conversation to drive traffic to or create new accounts for changelog hosts. And then I would do a certain number of that every month, and then I would do that work for you. So what I'm doing is with the teaching, with the live streaming, is saying, here's how I do things, and then outbound Olga is, I will do all that work for you. So that's the plan for it. And I haven't officially launched since I'm still figuring out who are the right kind of people or who have budget for things like that.
Okay, it's sort of like a productized service.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm giving away all the things about how do I do it, and then the pay is I do it for you. That's the plan that I have. What do you think of services like that?
Sorry.
What do you think of a service like that?
Yeah, it is great. So, of course, for product that is very small, this has a very low price point. I don't know if I
Right.
would be
Right.
really
It's not the
choosing the right
right
one.
right.
But yeah, if it is enterprise product or something, I definitely see someone uh, using uh, using this kind of a service to automate this outreach. So I definitely see I definitely see some value in what you're doing. And like I said before, like the the things that I learned in the 2 hours, it is much more than what I have learned reading through all the different articles, right? So I definitely think that is a great this kind of the live streaming, all those things, right? So it is a great way for you to also create content, and I think it's great what
Yeah.
you're doing with
Thank you.
with a lot of things.
Yeah, I've found the same thing to be true. Like, I want to help independent developers and solo developers, but they're generally not the people who are in the place to hire someone to do it for them. Instead, they're in the place to learn about it, to do it themselves. So I want to do things that are live streaming and free, but then I've got a guide, a book that I'm working on so that people can read about my process instead. And then I was thinking of having like just coaching sessions, which is have book a strategy session with me, and I'll walk through one-on-one something like this, and that'd be a smaller like flat rate. I think that would be manageable. What do you think of something like that for indie makers? Does that make more sense?
I think if you could create some kind of a course, right, a video course or something,
Okay.
and that would be much more affordable than like. Of course, I understand that you are also doing free live streaming and coaching, but maybe later you can use all this content and say this is how we would do, and you can create maybe a 5 hour video course and sell it for maybe $200 or $300 or something, and that would be really affordable for a person like me to like get a crash course in outbound sales. That is that makes a lot of sense for me to buy and learn from you.
Okay.
That is that, that would be like I have bought multiple such courses, and I have been doing all these kinds of learning through that, and I would definitely buy something if you create something like this. So that is
That's great. What class have you taken that's been your favorite so far?
uh, there is there is have you heard of Ramit Sethi?
Oh yeah, I will teach you to be rich.
Yeah, yeah.
But he also has a lot of other courses.
Yeah, he has a lot of expensive courses too, but I have taken a few courses like um he had a course like uh, how to talk to anybody. So that was one
Mm.
course which I definitely wanted because I'm a huge introvert and I wanted to learn how to talk and make this small talk and all those things, right? So I have been like I constantly whenever I go to any conferences or any place, I used to go away, be in a corner and just look at my phone and be with myself, right? So taking that course made me like get out of that place and go talk to people, network with them. That has definitely improved a lot, and that is one course I would like say that has improved my general networking skills itself. And of course, there's a lot to be improved yet, but yeah, so that is one. And there are like others are mostly I've taken programming related technical
Yeah.
courses, so new languages or those kind of courses. So that is also I generally improve my skills and using that. So yeah, but like I said, I technical side is fine, but I wanted to. The whole point of me starting these kind of small products and building this was to get out there, market it, learn how to market or sell to people, and get people to buy this. That's what I'm experimenting and learning through this. And yeah, if there are any courses that are that you are building, that you are creating, then I would definitely start to follow that and do. So yeah, that's what
Great.
I was thinking when you said creating this content as a lead for your website. So
Yeah, that's something that I'm glad to help. I found that it's a really clear divide between established startups with revenue and indie makers, or the solo founders. And I'm like, well, it's the same principles to learn to say, okay, well, how do I put it from, their perspective? How do I show the value of the money? How do I say the pain points? So those are the same processes that apply. And indie makers they're learning on the journey of doing everything. So it's the things that are important to them are what is going to help them immediately where they are. So it's different to say, I can talk about the concept of think about it from your customer's perspective. It's totally different when I can say to you instead, so a product manager is putting out a release and they just went through all of this negative customer backlash that's specific to you exactly where you are, and you can absorb it as, oh, this is mine, I know exactly where this is, versus this concept that's high level and it might be far away. So I find this really valuable to do because I feel like other people can also learn, which is why I'm glad I'm doing the live streaming, because there are other people who build apps for the same reason. They're developers, but they want to do something that is a product, and it means more than just coding. They have to have the people and the value skills, and this is a chance for them to learn how to do it themselves. Awesome. Well, I feel good about our session. Are you okay if we wrap up? Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
I think that's all I had to ask, and it was a great session by the way. So
Awesome.
I think we can wrap it up.
Okay, excellent. So have a good rest of your day. I think it's evening, very late
Yeah,
evening. Okay.
yeah, it's almost night.
Okay, okay. Well,
It's 9 o'clock in the evening.
okay, all right, gotcha. So, thank you for spending time with me on this Friday evening for you. And I'm really glad that we got to spend some time together. So, I will be in touch with you by email, and then I'll let you know how the updates go. And I want to hear about your Product Hunt launch. I will be upvoting.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the session. And once I update the copy on the site, I will also ping you, and I will get your opinion. And
Yeah, I definitely want to support and cheer you on as moving things forward, because now it's like you understand it as yours, not just some idea far away. And I want to support you moving forward. I think that's one of the great things about the community of makers is we're all uplifting and supporting. You got it. Okay, see you later. Bye.
Bye.
That was amazing. I'm so grateful. Okay, so for the live streaming world, where are we over here? Live streaming world. That was really. Oh, where? Okay. All right, live streaming world on Twitch. I'm thinking that it's time to take a break and reset. I feel really great about the session that we just wrapped up with Srini and changelog host and going through the process. This is something I feel is so important to help people where they are, and not just here's some high level ideas like do things that don't scale. Genius advice in one sentence, but then it's where are you actually right now? What are you working with? What skills do you have? What skills are you looking to improve? So that's where we make a difference in our own personal life, not just the really inspirational words of very successful people we look up to. So I'm stoked about this. I am going to stop this live stream and then we are going to pick it up again later for wrap up and notes, since I feel like I was able to help 6 shippers like I said I would for this sales week challenge. So I feel great about that, and I will see you in a bit. Okay, bye.